Hello, greetings, and welcome to the Vaults Remastered, my journey of conversion, taking my old 5th edition homebrewed world of the Vaults and turning it into a Pathfinder 2nd edition remastered version of the game. The remastered version of 2E is releasing in just a couple of weeks, so I've got a lot of work to do, and making these videos is part of that process. I'm just stepping through my procedures, my thoughts, my strategies of how I can take a long running campaign world that has about 5 years of lore and characters and stories and blowing that whole thing up and restarting it. And how do you migrate that over to second edition Pathfinder while retaining that flavor, using a lot of those stories, but fitting this new customized, highly adaptable game system of Pathfinder. Today's topic is Kvarca, one of my primordials, the first of my primordials, which are the gods within the Vaults game world. And he is a shimmering pursuit of perfection. Today's episode is going to be talking about how we are going to manifest a mythology for this guy using various sets of tools and tricks and strategies. We're going to be tying our mythology that we're creating to the mechanics of the game system. And Pathfinder's got lots of mechanics. Some people say that's a bad thing, but I disagree. I think it's a great thing. It gives you a lot of options as a game master, a lot of methods in order to weave your stories with rules that actually make sense. That's one of my issues I always had with D&D was I always had to make up stuff and always had to just homebrew everything and come up with my own rules and didn't know if they worked or not. So this system's much more robust, a lot more going for it. So we're going to show how that works as well. Today we're going to be using our AI Muse chat bot. Their chat GPT, I call her Kathy, whatever. And she's going to help us flesh out this mythology. She can help us complete Kvarca, this new Primordial's history, his status, his description, his renown, realm, and goals. Things that I have set forth on what I call a primordial template for fleshing out these entities. Kvarka is just number one out of probably at least a dozen of these primordials that I ultimately will be creating. I also want to use that tool along with Pathfinder rules in order to come up with scenarios that you can use your lore to fuel to come up with actionable mythology stuff. So not just, oh, there's some cutesy lore and it sits in your binder and nobody ever sees it, but actual stuff that you can use for scenarios of skill checks and exploration activities and downtime activities. Characters can use it for their backstories. You can use it for NPC creation, factions, you name it. We're going to try to weave that all together today. So let's take a look at how I go about doing this, and I'll be giving an example, and we're going to show you some live chat GPT work so you can get a real-time feel of my process and how you yourself could take your game and convert it as easily, well, sort of easily as I am doing. So before this video, in my last one, we talked about the whole concept here for this primordial Kvarca and for my primordials in general. And start with just raw input from whatever resource that you're using, books, wikis, published materials, your own notes, whatever. I feed those into ChatGPT, into Kathy, and I work with her to come up with answers to some questions that I have set forth on a primordial template. I also used her to rename Crystali was Kvarka's original name, a second edition D&D creation with a fairly lean amount of reference resource material. And between Kathy and I, came up with the what I think is a pretty cool name for this entity, Kvarca. Just sounds a lot more badass, I think. As far as what's new in this episode here, we're going to be building this mythology together. We're going to be using the template I mentioned to flesh out history and status first. And then we're going to build the primordial a new home that's appropriate to this gem-like beautiful, brilliant entity. We're also going to align this new Primordial Kvarca to our game world's theme, this grimdark survival theme, and also give him a personality in our status. And again, we're going to be using ChatGPT to showcase how I go about doing this. So let me pause the vid for a second, get Kathy ready, and then we'll start feeding in some info for her so that we can see what she comes up with. Be right back. All right, so first and foremost, you can see that what I fired in here is I told Kathy that I'm renaming Crystalli Kvarca, and then I gave her a list of titles that I wanted to use for this guy. His luminant brilliance, the radiant sovereign of Prismar, the unblemished lord of Quartzaram, the flawless ward of the Luminar Nexus, and king of all Julkin. Now, this guy is going to be magnanimous. He's going to be flamboyant almost. He's going to be larger than life. He is this glowing, gleaming, huge, titanic entity. So he needs a cool name, and he needs lots of cool titles. Spoiler, I had done this process prior to shooting this video, so just, I'm no genius. I didn't just come up with these in the last 5 seconds. But what I do think is interesting, as soon as I told Kathy that, she took the basic information that we had generated during my last video session when I put in the basics of my template and the Crystalli background information. And as soon as I put in these names, she was like, bam, just jumped on it. With the new names and titles for Crystalli, now known as Kvarca, let's update the mythology. So she immediately just started firing out stuff. Sometimes this is bad, right? Like, whoa, 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 slow down. But, a name is important. Those titles are important. So she immediately started using that and started updating the history, the status, the allies and enemies, description, renown, realm, goals, etc. So I kind of like that. Now, what I want to do is I want to focus first on history and taking this information that we have in this generic form currently and use it to start to flesh out this Kvarca. Specifically, we want to use the history to go ahead and come up with probably his home would be. Let's try that. So let's do this. Can you suggest some ways in which we can use his history to flesh out Kvarca's, to flesh out a home or realm that is befitting a gleaming, brilliant, titanic, crystalline, primordial, such as Kvarca. Right, so I want to take the history and I want to get it to better mesh with this vision of this guy, right? Because one of the problems I had with the initial resources was that it really didn't say much other than he was in the plane of mineral, and I didn't have a plane of mineral in my game, right? So I need to create a space where this guy would exist. So that's what I want to see if Chatty can help. In the basic world of the vaults, the setting is grim, dark, and confined to ruins of old draconic cities. PCs are barely surviving. However, those descriptions do not fit Kvarca, do not fit what I imagine Kvarca to look like and to act like. He's the he's he's like the luminant brilliance. He's the radiant sovereign, for goodness sake. Boom. Let's see what she can do with that. Let's give her some thoughts. Certainly, given Kvarca's grand titles and crystalline nature, his realm would stand in stark contrast to the grim and confined environment of the vaults. Here's how you could imagine and implement Kvarca's realm to reflect his radiant and majestic essence, right? So, bam, she's already starting to go. Now she's picking some of the names that I've already fed. And again, spoiler, I had done this previously and gotten the name the Luminar Nexus. This fills that the plane of what positive energy or whatever it was from second edition. So the Luminar Nexus is fitting my game world of energy flow through the planets, energy known as the form of Ur, and this flows through telluric currents. That's kind of like magnetic fields flowing down from the poles into the core of the world, known as the world navel. And so the Luminar Nexus is a thing. So I had that name already. So she's using it. I didn't tell her what the Luminar Nexus is, though. So she's filling in some blanks here. So Luminar Nexus, the realm of Kvarca, dazzling expanse within the vaults, defies the bleakness that pervades the surrounding areas. So here's what she's doing. She's taking the Luminar Nexus from his title and making that be the name of his realm. Now, I call it Prismar. Prismar is my re-envisioning of the mineral domain. She's taking the Luminar Nexus, which is my reimagination of the positive plane, and calling that his realm. Either way, it's kind of cool, right? She's just taking some bits and pieces of info that I gave her and applying it to this, right? Underground crystalline wonder, testament to Kvarca's power and majesty. So the cool thing is she's creating a world that fits this guy, right? I have the idea myself, fed it to her. Now she's giving me a lot of details. Visual aesthetic. I didn't ask her for a visual aesthetic. Structural design. I didn't ask for structural designs. Atmosphere, inhabitants, unique features, interactive elements. OM goodness, right? She's firing out stuff. This is what I'm talking about. She takes my basic concepts and just explodes them out there. And immediately, maybe stuff I wasn't even thinking about or wasn't thinking about yet, she's already fired out a bunch of stuff. This is awesome, right? I mean, this is cool. So let's see. Visual aesthetic. Luminescent atmosphere. The air itself seems to glitter with a myriad of sparkling dusts, creating an atmosphere that's perpetually shimmering. Okay. Crystal forest. Towering formations of crystal that mimic the appearance of trees and other natural structures, each radiating with an inner light that casts prismatic colors at the surrounding walls. The only problem with that is this is an underworld, so wouldn't necessarily be trees, but it could be tree-like, crystalline, whatever shapes. Every surface in Kvarca's realm is polished to a mirror sheen. That sounds cool. I kind of already have that idea in my current version. Reflecting and multiplying the light in an endless dance of brilliance. Structural design. Throne Hall. Kvarca's throne is located in a grand hall with towering ceilings, allowing him to look upon his subjects from his gem-laden seat. The throne hall is illuminated by a central light source. Now, see, this is kind of plain, right? Some of the stuff's sort of just dull. No pun intended. Right? It needs some oomph, needs some meat to it. Crystal spires. The architecture features high spires and arches resembling natural crystal growths. All right, that kind of fits with my own visual, but with symmetry and purpose of intelligent design. Yeah. Floating islands. This is weird. Within the Nexus, there are floating platforms of crystal suspended by Kvarca's magic, where the most sacred rituals and important audiences take place. Maybe, not sure about that. That kind of sounds like some sort of cliche. Atmosphere, music of the spheres. The natural resonance of the crystals creates a perpetual symphony with tones that are said to heal the weary and inspire the hopeless. I like this. Just that tinkling sound of crystals, something like that is going. Like your ASMR, like dream or something. Although that would probably be crazy ASMR. Fragrance. The air is infused with invigorating scent, akin to ozone, mixed with the earthy aroma of freshly mined gemstones. Freshly mined gemstones have an earthy aroma? Okay. Inhabitants, loyal servants, quasi-elementals who serve Kvarca are more refined and radiant than their kin outside the Nexus. They've been shaped by his will. Jewelkin Guardians, creatures unique to Kvarca's domain, made of living gemstones. They patrol the Nexus, ensuring security. Unique features, gems of power. Scattered throughout the Nexus are gems of immense power that serve as sources of magic, focusing points for Kvarca's will, and perhaps even keys to unlocking new areas or powers within the realm. Prismatic fountains. Water as clear as diamond cascades through the Nexus. Streams and fountains. Purity, a gift from Kvarca. Interactive elements. Mirage passages. Illusions created by the refractive light can either conceal or create illusion of pathways that do not exist. Crystal puzzles. Some sections of the Nexus can only be navigated by solving intricate puzzles. All right, so, I mean, some of the stuff is okay. I mean, there's a couple things I'm like, ooh, that's pretty cool. But generally speaking, this is fairly uninspired. I mean, and I say that just because I've seen what she can do. And this is just, just at surface level stuff. But if there's anything in here that you're interested in, you then go and ask her to pursue it. Hey, what if the forests were actually, dangling vine-like structures, whatever. She'll and go with that. But the cool thing is she's giving me more than I asked for, which, may seem a problem, but I like it because it gives me stuff I can now work with that I hadn't thought about. All right, so I think overall she has done what I asked. She has taken the history section that I shared and used it to flesh out a realm where this guy could live with some visuals, some auditory. There's the smells in there, right? So I mean, you got visuals, you got sounds, you got odors. It gives you a lot to work with if you wanted to quickly come up with what this realm, was like for, say, a PC that was traveling through the area or came from this area. All right, so that's pretty cool. Now I want her to go to the next step with this history, and that is to take it and use it to give us, actually, actually, no, I think that's good. What I do, let's switch over to status. Let's use the status that she came up with, and we're going to take that and try to make sure that he has a theme and a personality to go with it. And then what I want to do is want to kind of like, I want to futz with this a little bit off camera, and then I'll come back with sort of final version of some stuff. So let's take a look at this real quick. Let's see if you get her to use the status information to make sure that it matches the theme. His theme matches the game's theme and gives him some personality, right? Some charisma. So let's see if we can do that. Give this a shot. Okay, I'm gonna copy. Let me pause the vid so I go ahead and copy what I want, and then I'll come back in a second. Okay, ready to go. So here is the current status. So here's where Kvarca is presently, what he's up to. The Radiant Sovereign of Prismar presides over his crystalline kingdom, wielding his scepter with absolute authority. Confined to Quartzaram, the heart of his power, he is a potent ruler within his borders, but longs to restore his reach across the cosmos. He tirelessly seeks pathways to elevate his status from a bound primordial to a deity, orchestrating his maneuvers with the precision of a chess master. The flawless ward of the lunar nexus draws upon the plane of minerals' abundant energies, channeling them into his quest for ascension. So I'm starting to do this. I'm saying, hey, can you use the suggested status section to align Kvarca's theme to the game world's theme of grim, dark survival and a struggle between chaos and order? And then I say, also, can you use the concepts from the status section to flesh out Kvarca's personality? I think his confinement is self-imposed due to a flawed crack in his body from his fighting during the Scion War. I don't want to cheat and give her too much of my current stuff. I want to use what she currently has. So she doesn't know much about the smash to the face stuff that I have already come up with. So I'm going to kind of give her the generic stuff. So he did get wounded during the Scion War, so she does have information about the Scion War from the Primordial stuff I gave earlier. Um, and I think this likely affects him greatly because he was so beautiful and perfect before that. Before then. All right, let's throw this in there and see if she can do something with taking the status, those couple little extras I gave her, and then make sure that he's lining up with our theme. See, check that, and then see if she can get some personality to flesh out with this guy. So integrating Kvarca's theme with the overarching grimdark theme of the world-defined struggle, chaos, order, considering the impact of self-imposed confinement can add deep layer complexity. So she's going off immediately. Alignment with the grimdark theme. Status. Kvarca's realm within the vaults, the Luminar Nexus, is an oasis of splendor and order amidst the chaos and decay that defines the outside world. However, his status as a beacon of order is not without its burdens. The once flawless Kvarca now carries a crack in his otherwise perfect form, a constant reminder of his fall from grace during the Scion War. This crack, though small, acts as a focal point for his deepest insecurities and symbolizes the ever-present potential for chaos to shatter order. I love that. That's not even where I was thinking. But it's like a symbol of chaos. Like, he's not thinking of it as chaos versus order, but, GM, savant mode. Yeah, that's kind of a cool idea. Survival. The Luminar Nexus, while beautiful, is an isolated pocket of brilliance in a dark world, and Kvarca's survival within it mirrors the player's struggles in the vaults. Again, this metaphorical stuff. His fear of the crack widening or being exploited by his enemies drives him to extreme measures of control and vigilance within his domain. The maintenance of his realm's magnificence, therefore, becomes an act of defiance against the chaos outside, a symbol of survival at its finest. Chaos versus order. Kvarca, in his struggle to maintain his dominion and purity, may go to great lengths to suppress any element of chaos. So you can see him becoming tyrannical, right? That threatens the meticulous order of his realm. His rule is thus both enlightened and tyrannical. Bang, ding, 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 ding. And he cannot tolerate imperfection. So what if your PCs show up there and they've got like a scuff on their shoe or a stain on their shirt? They get thrown in jail. Anyway, Kvarca's personality. That's again, those are interesting. This is interesting stuff that I can use, right? So if the PCs were to go to his realm, you can see how these little bits of lore would be great things to have, like say the gate guard, use if there's some sort of a social encounter, right? Or maybe they learn this from some merchants. Hey, you better wash your shirt before you go there. Anyway, Kvarca's personality. Let's see what she says here. Prideful and perfectionist, Kvarca's self-worth is deeply tied to his physical form in the presentation of his realm. The crack in his crystalline body is a source of immense shame and a blow to his vanity. He may hide the flaw beneath grandiose titles and magnificent displays of power. Inwardly, he's constantly battling his sense of imperfection. Right, great. This is exactly what I was thinking. This is like on his mind constantly. He's obsessive. He's controlling. To compensate for his vulnerability, Kvarca is obsessively controlling over his domain. He may be unwilling to leave the Luminar Nexus. Ding, ding, ding. Yeah, it's exactly what I was thinking. Focusing his efforts on fortifying against chaos. Right? I mean, she goes on and on and on. Exactly what I was thinking. And she's coming up with the same kind of stuff. Give me some new things to think about as well. But I can now use this stuff, right? This lore that we're generating. And again, I would go back and forth with her several times and flesh out each of these things as much as I needed or wanted to, or explore some of these new avenues that she's opened and come up with a really fleshed out, final product. And that's where I want to pause. I want to have the someone very familiar with Kvarca's realm and the Radiant Sovereign to tell you more about his history as well as his status. Be right back.
In the glimmering depths of the mineralized vault of Prismar, and bordering the grand luminescence of the world navel, Kvarca stood as the ruler of all crystal kind. Born from the union of the earth god Volculus and the shimmering Shuic princess whose name has been lost to history, Kvarca possessed an unmatched luster, color, and natural presence that intertwined the elemental forces of earth and radiance. He inherited an affinity for the hidden riches of the subterranean world and a burning passion for flawless perfection. Before the Scion War, Kvarca's influence and authority over crystal kind grew steadily, allowing him to establish Quartzaram, a crystal city of unrivaled beauty and limitless wealth.
So that was a snippet of the history I was able to generate uh, between the notes I'd originally provided as well as the resource I'd used from Crystalline, and my back and forth with uh, Chatty Cathy there, similar to the process that I was just illustrating. There's a bunch more than just this, but from the history part, you already get a sense of what this guy's domain, what not his domain, but his realm, what his world is like. This Prismar, and this world navel, and his position within it. Then the next part that I worked on was what you just saw, the status. So let's take a look at this from the Vault's narrator perspective as well.
Following the marring of his perfect crystalline flesh, a broken Kvarca retreated into seclusion in the depths of his bejeweled palace, where he surrounded himself with reflective surfaces that only displayed his unblemished profile. His dreams of dominion shattered along with his physical body, Kvarca now lives in terror of cracking further and forbids the use of blunt objects within Quartzaram. His greatest fear is he will be forever marred, the bearer of defeat and mark of Felser's punishment. Kvarca has become a prisoner of his own sentence, fixated on repairing his fractured visage above all else, refusing to leave his palace lest others discover the truth of his imperfection.
So working on that was fun. I really wanted to lean into that crystal perfection that he used to be, back before the war. But then when he sided with the other primordials against the gods, Felser, who was one of the gods, dwarvish god, crafting and blacksmithing, cracked him upside the face with his mighty hammer, splintering. So picture like a radiating, blunt force trauma crack, and then that spread some cracks down his torso. Uh, Kvarca basically quit at that point, crying, turtling in the corner, and he has become a recluse since then. So he doesn't literally show his face in public. He still is very powerful, but he lives within a prison of his own making within his palace, and he is desperate to fix this broken face, this cracked visage that he has. So that is huge fodder for quests or lore research. Maybe you could make a deal with this guy if you're able to figure out some way to fix his form or whatever. So I wanted to really get into that concept of a flawed gemstone and what that would mean for him personality wise, which fits, I think, with the theme here in the vaults of just this sort of grim, ugly place for the most part. So even this beautiful location, this Prismar and run by Kvarca, is also got ugliness within it. It's perfect. All right, then what I wanted to get into was looking at how to take that information, this history, his current situation, and turn it into something that player characters could do, something, mysteries they could solve, actions they could take, things they could research. So I wanted to adapt this lore and mesh it in with Pathfinder mechanics, investigations, exploration activities, research, downtime activities, lore skill checks, etc. So as an example, what I want to do is show with Kathy here that you can take the various bits of the primordial template and the information that she has provided and flesh it out, but at the same time try to mesh it in with specific Pathfinder items in mind, or mechanics in mind. So what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to use some of my actual finished mythology stuff, not the working stuff I was just showing you. But I'm going to take some of my more complete finished stuff and show how if you take this information and you can feed it into Chatty Cathy there. I want to see if she can do this. I want to see if she can take some of my description information that I've up with and use that to design a diplomacy based encounter, something that can be part of a quest. You know, your PCs are on a quest, they encounter some NPC, maybe, I don't know, a merchant, a priest, a scholar, whatever, a guard, and they use their knowledge of Kvarca's description, perhaps this cracked face, perhaps his magical scepter, his crown of floating stones. How would that translate into a diplomacy encounter? So let's tackle that one, and then we'll come back to these other ones. So let me go ahead and grab my information on his description. We'll throw it over in Kathy there and see what she comes up with. 1 second. Okay, I've gone ahead and pasted in my information. So here's what I've told her. I said I want to design some social encounter scenarios using Pathfinder 2nd edition rules and mechanics that require diplomacy checks and that are based on knowledge of Kvarca's description. So you have a character that has lore knowledge, let's say, of what Kvarca looks like, that sort of thing, or how he manifests. And they have a social encounter and they're trying to make a diplomacy check. How could you do that? So this is an example of how you can take your lore and come up with a tangible, usable, encounter. Then go on to say, here is my revised version of Kvarca's description that I want you to use as the foundation for these diplomacy checks. Please provide specific NPCs. Let's see. Please provide suggestions for NPCs. Target DCs for the diplomacy roll. And degrees of success in your suggestions. I mean, I'm wanting to swing for the fences. And then I go ahead and post in my description that I have for Kvarca based on what I've worked on previously. So it's like 3 paragraphs of stuff. Let's see what she does with it. And then we'll take one of them and see if we can get our Vault's narrator to tell us what it's all about. Go. Let's see what she says. Certainly, let's create social encounter scenarios using Pathfinder 2e rules. Tribute to Kvarca. A lesser elemental envoy seeking to present rare gemstone. Tribute. Target DC. 40 or 45. Dang. Oh, it's a level 20 encounter. Okay. Degrees of success. Embark is exceptionally pleased with the tribute. Offers the players a boon. So that goes to the divine God, what's the name of that I was talking about in the rules there, the gods and magic rules. Names escape me. Anyway, gods can give you boons and curses. All right, so there's one. Scenario 1, tribute, repairing the fracture, audience with the radiant sovereign. Yeah, I kind of like that one. Audience of the radiant. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and I'll do this off camera. I'm gonna flesh out probably that third one, the audience one. That sounds interesting. Somebody wants to meet with Kvarca, the guy who is a recluse and wants to hide his face. That, if anything, is a wicked, challenging diplomacy check. Let's see how this works out. I'll be back and we'll see if our ally within the vaults can explain what's happening.
The priest smiled at the jeweled necklace we placed upon Kvarca's altar as an offering. Your generosity is appreciated. Walk with me and I will share what I know. As we followed, he revealed the information we sought about his master's regalia. A crown of sentient stones encircles my unblemished lord's head, an ethereal halo of exquisite gems that bestows upon him powers unmatched. Some were offered to him as tributes by his vassals. Others were selectively gathered by his loyal servants, the greatest champions among the lattice. Among them is one that might aid in your quest. A pallium, a shimmering opal that grants the ability to traverse dimensions. With such power, you could enter the chaos bubble and reach the ancient vessel trapped within. My lord might be convinced to let you borrow it for a price. Although what you could offer the radiant sovereign, whose wealth has no measure, is beyond me.
So in that scenario, I went with the idea that the PCs need to meet with Kvarca to borrow, or they heard he's got some powerful magical sentient gems that they know revolve around his head like a crown. So they would go to one of the high priests, and knowing that from religion, let's say, that and through diplomacy checks, that you got to schmooze these guys with some, fancy gemstone donations or jewelry or whatever, that greases the wheel. So there was your scenario that would then allow this guy to look upon the PCs favorably and maybe get them an audience with Kvarca, or maybe someone higher up in the Luminite lattice, the cult that worships Kvarca. So that's an example of how you could use lore knowledge of description of the Primordial, what he looks like, how he manifests, as fodder for some diplomacy check as part of some quest that the players run. All right, so the next one, why don't we take a look at how we can use, let's see. Why don't we see about using exploration. So for let's come up with an investigation activity. Okay, put this on here so you can see it. An investigation activity that is related to renown. So you are aware of Kvarca's renown, what he's famous for, what powers he has, or at least you're trying to become aware of that. Yeah. So you're trying to become aware of, what he can do. So one of your PCs, one of your players says, "Hey, I want to do an investigation check. What do I know about Kvarca's, powers or whatever it is?" So this would be something that you would do, let's say, during exploration mode. Maybe it's intense research, so it could be a downtime activity, multiple players involved in it, trying to figure out whatever this is about Kvarca. Maybe it has to do with his those stones that are sentient, supposedly revolving around his head as a crown. Maybe it's his scepter that he wields. We'll pick one of those, and we'll go with that. All right, so let me go ahead and set this up with Kathy again, and see what she would come up with. Be right back. All right, here we go. So I went ahead and put this into Chat GPT. So I said, let's attempt something similar to what we just did, but use knowledge of Kvarca's renown as the basis. This time I need suggestions for an investigation check, I guess, that could be done during exploration or downtime by one or more PCs. As part of your suggestions, provide ideas for any locations the PCs might need to go to conduct research, or NPCs they might need to meet with to ask questions. Here's Kvarca's updated renown section I want you to use when generating your suggestions. And I go ahead and paste what I have about Kvarca's renown, what he's famous for, his powers, etc. Talk about sentient stones. I talk about his scepter known as Christrum, and that he's a really powerful wizard. Let's see what Kathy can come up with for this one. All right, so investigation check based on Kvarca's renown. The players would need to delve into ancient lore, interact with knowledgeable NPCs, venture in perilous locations. Here's some suggestions. Unearthing ancient lore, researching ancient texts to learn more about Kvarka's connection. Locations: the Vaulted Librarium. Librarium, okay. Quartzaram Ruins, the Luminar Nexus. Yeah, that'd be pretty dangerous to go to the Luminar Nexus and study the Mirrored Wall, but possibly, because there's trapped enemies of Kvarka in there, so maybe they know something. That's interesting. NPCs to meet: Archivist Eldara, Gemstone Conclave. There's a secretive group of miners and mages with knowledge of his Prismar's depths. Target DC: challenging considering the secrecy and the age of the information. High level characters: DC 35 to 40 would be appropriate. Dang, she's going for high level stuff. Degrees of success, she's got some stuff. That's just scenario 1, guys. Look at that. Scenario 2: interviews with exiled foes. Scenario 3: quest for Quartzaram's origins. That could be interesting. Huh. All right, I'm going to kind of do the same thing. I'm going to go back and forth, kind of flesh out one of these ideas. Maybe I'll do the third one. Maybe I'll come up with something different. And then once I've got something put together, we'll check with our friend in the vaults and see what he knows. All right, we'll be back in a minute.
It is said Kvarka possesses arcane abilities that far surpass the limits of mortal wizards. Indeed, his command over the mystic arts rivals the gods themselves. At the heart of his power, however, lies Quartzaram, a legendary scepter forged from one-of-a-kind gemstones only found within the depths of Prismar. And the mirrored wall, that shimmering boundary, it's not just a barrier, but a message. A warning written eternal light: cross the unblemished Lord and face an unending gaze of your own defeat.
Yeah, so in that one, the concept is that the PCs are planning on making a move against Kvarka, or at least his realm. And so they're researching, trying to find out information like a recon about what they might be up against. So this would be some high level, mission or something. And so they're talking to an NPC, perhaps a sage or something to that effect, and trying to learn more about Kvarka himself. So this would be the information, this would be the conversation that they would get. It potentially could be something that a PC learned and then is reporting back to his team or her team, depending. You can obviously, this would be whatever the player might say. But either way, you get the idea that you can take, again, knowledge, lore from the game and turn it into these conversations. You can turn it into these activities. So this might have been a multi-person research. It could have been one person researching about his Kvarka's wizardly abilities, another one researching Quartzaram, another one researching the mirrored wall. Maybe someone else is researching the gemstones, the sentient gemstones. So there's lots of options you can do, and this could be part of a bigger quest, of course. So that's kind of the cool thing that I like, that I'm trying to do here, is take this lore that I'm coming up with the help of Kathy there, and tying it into Pathfinder's mechanisms, because they got some really good stuff that you can use. All right, let's take a look at our next concept I want to try. So for the third one, I was thinking, how can you use your lore that you're developing for Kvarka or any of your primordials, any of your gods, to provide character backstory fodder, right? And maybe it's a cleric, maybe it's a champion, but it doesn't have to be, right? It could be anybody who is related to Kvarka, his cult, his realm, whatever, in any way, shape, or form that is part of that character's backstory. So maybe for this one, the player character is using their knowledge of Kvarka's realm to build the story. So let's go ahead and check with our vaults, our vaults companion, our vaults narrator, and see what we can do. I'm not going to go ahead and run this one into Kathy because it's pretty much the version that what I've just done. I've got a revised version of his realm and the locations within it that Kvarca exists. So let's just use. There's really no. It's not like a skills challenge here or whatever. It's just using that information to flesh out a backstory or to create the background knowledge that somebody who knows Kvarca's realm. So let me go ahead and pause the vid for a sec and get that false narrator queued up.
Prismar is a realm unmatched, governed by the Radiant Sovereign. Tread carefully on your path, for the splendor of the place mirrors the ambition of its ruler. Every stone tells a tale of those who either fell to its majesty or rose to favor in Kvarca's court. The heart of Kvarca's power lies within Quartzaram in the Jewels Tier, a palace conjured from the rarest of gemstones, each reflecting the glory of his reign. Beware, for the land pulses with magic potent and untamed. At its heart lies Gemcore, a chamber where the energy of the luminaire nexus flows swiftest. Its radiance is said to be the very life force of Prismar, and it is this energy that Kvarca bends to his formidable will.
Yeah, so I think for this one, this would be a good bit of lore information that could explain a sorcerer's power. You know, how do they have that radiant, energy? They journeyed to the realm of Prismar, or their parents did, and got exposed to the Luminar Nexus energy, and that's how the sorcerer now is imbued with this energy. Or maybe the backstory is parent or friend or whatever was part of some challenge to the Radiant Sovereign's rule, and they were killed or imprisoned in the Mirrored Wall. Some servant of some greater powered gemkin or whatever that was battling, or jewelkin that was battling Kvarca, or maybe a servant within the Jewels Tier, and maybe they accidentally glimpsed Kvarca's cracked face, and that led to them being murdered or something like that. Who knows? Got some cool ideas there that you can use. All right, so then I think the last part that we can look at with Kvarca here is his goals. What can we use those to do? So taking a look at my thoughts here, as a GM, you're looking for fuel for your plot hooks, right? Things that you can throw out there that players might grab onto and pursue. So maybe lore knowledge of Kvarca's goals could provide the PCs with a reason to go to Prismar. They learn that there's some way to find to achieve godhood, to ascend to the heavens themselves, so, as that's a goal for Kvarca himself. So using your goals of your knowledge of the goals of the Primordial could definitely provide an impetus for your player characters to leave the tavern and go to someplace dangerous. So similar to the last one, I'm not going to go to the Chat GPT stuff. I've got a huge chunk of goals that Kvarca has. I'm going to feed those into Chat GPT and give her this suggestion. Come up with a reason for the PCs, or some knowledge the PCs might have to actually go to Prismar or wherever. All right, so let me fire that in there, and then we'll check with our Vaults narrator and see if he can tell us a tale of potential ascendancy to godhood.
To know the heart of Kvarca is to know a labyrinth of ambitions. His every thought is a jewel, multifaceted and gleaming with intent. He watches over Quartzaram with the fierce protectiveness of a leviathan over its hoard, for the riches within are not mere opulence, but the lifeblood of his power, his shield against the covetous gaze of outsiders. Yet do not be swayed by the notion that he merely plays the sentinel over sparkling caverns and glittering halls. No, Kvarca's gaze pierces deeper realms, seeking filaments of inception. It is the power of the gods he craves to repair his fractured body and then ascend beyond the limits of his crystalline throne. To him, the heavens are but a step away on the grand staircase he seeks to climb.
So I think for that one, it might be a cool idea. What if they come across some dying man, and this is the tale that they hear as they're on their way to Prismar, or perhaps this guy's convincing them to go to Prismar. That, or maybe it's one of the enemies of Kvarca, somebody who was challenging him and was trying to stop him from getting these filaments of inception. Again, we've got concepts of using the lore to create story, drive story, give, these actionable scenes and scenarios and stuff. So this could be another example of, player characters hearing this information or coming across an NPC with this information, or reading this in a book or something like that. Gives them an idea. Ooh, hey, we want to become gods. Why don't we go there and see if we can get some of these filaments of inception? Or we know he can see the filaments of inception, and we need those for fighting off ultimate chaos or something like that. There's lore here that PCs can use to do stuff, and that's the point of the lore, in my opinion, is to have it be a usable commodity in your game. All right, so let's wrap this up. So, hey, what have we been talking about this whole time? We've got a fleshed out mythology for this guy Kvarca. This part of his mythology for me stretches 4 pages as I'm scanning through my document here. So I've got details fleshed out, multiple paragraphs for each of these chunks for my primordial template there, that I was able to answer those questions and generate information. And what I'm showing here now is that we can use this mythology we're creating, not to fill up a notebook, but to actually create mechanics, or use Pathfinder mechanics to come up with scenarios, encounters, backstories, plot hooks, etc., that your players can use to create their characters, that you can use to create story, that you can use to create, fun encounters or challenges, give them something to do during exploration or during downtime. And also it's creating for us our next installment in the series. Who are the people that worship this Kvarca? What do they want? What are they about? Who is this NPC that is so knowledgeable of Kvarca and his ways? We need to ask that NPC himself and see if he'll share.
In the time-forgotten recesses of the vaults, Kvarca's radiance has guided us, illuminating our path with tales of his origin, desires, and dominion. We have gazed into the shimmering facets of his history, but like a gem with endless faces, there's so much more to his tale. For where there is light, shadows follow. Beyond Kvarca's shimmering lore lies the tale of those who walk in his brilliance and those who covet his power in darkness. A cult that reveres him, that harnesses his essence for deeds that bring illumination to the very depths of the vaults. But that, dear Delver, is a tale for another time, a chapter yet to be unveiled.
And there you have it. Next episode, we're going to be exploring Kvarca's religion. We're going to have a deep dive similar to this episode, except we're going to see why would people worship this guy? What sort of rules might they have? What benefits does Kvarca get? What benefits do they get? Etc., etc. I'm going to use and show the second part of my primordial template that focuses on religion and its guiding questions. So once again, if you've enjoyed any of this content, or you want to see more, you learned some stuff, this was valuable information, any of that sort of thing that is piquing your curiosity, leave some comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel, etc., etc. Until next time, peace out. Have a good one. See ya.